These have been the standouts so far in Miami Hurricanes fall training camp.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We made it. I'm Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and writer for allhurricanes.com. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily all summer long. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Very happy to be joined on this episode by a man who can help us break down these early fall camp trends. We're also going to be talking some recruiting. Got some big decisions coming down this month. We will be talking about who needs the victory more, Miami or Florida, on August 31st. Talking about these fall camp standouts. Geo Milian, South Florida sports analyst, is with us. You know him, you love him. So Geo, I know you've gotten a ton of info, and this is the info we need, right? Because the media viewing during practices are short. Mario Cristobal keeps information very close to the vest, and I don't mind that. You know, he runs the operation his way. But who have you been hearing about in terms of standouts so far in the first week and a half of fall training camp?
I think a lot of people will get really excited about this one. He's kind of the forgotten man. Akheem Mesidor having a tremendous start to fall camp. Healthy. He's got his shoes. Donno, this is the peak time of the year where fans get to tell as many lies as they want. Look, maybe this is a lie. Maybe it's not. I spoke with a good friend of mine that he worked for ESPN in boxing. He's a big Canes fan. We were talking about it till like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning the other day, actually. He's out on the West Coast. We were talking for a while. If Akheem Mesidor stays healthy and you include that group of the other defensive linemen they brought into the transfer portal, that group can put up 50 sacks or potentially more this season. Between them, and then you have a blitzing linebacker like Kiko Mauanyoa, who's exceptional at that. So, yeah, Akheem Mesidor is one of them. Another guy I'll toss out there, maybe a little bit of a surprise to some people. Everyone's been wondering kind of what's going on with his development. Markeith Williams has actually had a pretty good fall camp as well, working mostly with the twos. He actually leads camp in interceptions.
I heard about that.
Yes, it's been quite a few picks during the fall camp. I know when people hear that, don't get too worried. It's not all first team, is some second team and third team quarterbacks throwing some of those picks and whatnot. Other name I will throw out there, he's carried on the progress he made heading into spring. I've been talking about this guy for over a year. He answered the call when they put him out on the field. Isaiah Horton.
Yeah.
Tremendous spring. He's carried it until the fall. He looks like an NFL wide receiver. I know people automatically think when Samuel Brown Jr. was brought into the program from Houston, the transfer wide receiver, that everyone kind of penciled him in as that opposite starting wide receiver to Jacoby George and then Xavier Strepp on the slot. That competition is very fierce. Those guys are going back and forth. Earlier in the week, Horton had like 2 touchdowns during one of the practices. Then Sam Brown came back the next day, had a touchdown. Other names I'll throw out as well. Damian Martinez has been as advertised. Cam Ward has continued all the great stuff from spring. Defense is a little ahead right now, which is kind of the norm. Usually in the spring for most college football teams around the country, the offense is ahead. You get into fall camp, the defense starts pulling away. That's actually a good sign. That's actually a good thing. That's what the trend is. 2 running backs I want to bring up, though. A.J. Allen. He's in great peak shape right now. He's going to play a big role this year, especially with the questions about Mark Fletcher and whatnot. And then the other one that everyone's been hearing all the buzz about it throughout the week, Chris Johnson Jr. the game has started to slow down for him. I think a lot of people forget when he was coming out of Dillard High School in Fort Lauderdale, up here in my neck of the woods. He was actually a wide receiver most of his high school career, switched to running back as a senior. So he was more so an athlete playing the running back position, had to learn the nuances, get comfortable and acclimated in terms of pass protection and responsibilities for that position. So he's really starting to catch up. And two other names as well. Everyone's heard about Elijah Arroyo and how healthy he is. As long as he stays healthy, knock on wood. My desk doesn't really sound like wood; it's more of a metal, but knock on metal. He should have a big year. But the two I want to talk about: Elijah Lofton carrying over what he did from spring till now. He's going to play a role on this offense this year. And Riley Williams, I mentioned back in spring how much more confident he is now. He's setting himself up for a pretty big second year. And I think that's something some people have to remember, that not all these guys are ready out the gate. Not everyone is your Francis Mauignois or your Ruben Baines.
You know, I want to talk heading into the first scrimmage tomorrow. Now it's going to be on lockdown, right? And again, Mario keeps everything really close to the vest. He did talk a little bit about on ACC Network about, what he wants to see in that scrimmage. He said, number one, he wants to see communication. Number two, technique and fundamentals. Number three, he just repeated the same word over and over again: compete, compete, compete. He said he wants every rep to look like it's game day. And then he said he wants flat out relentless effort. He did mention, he wants to see certain situations like red zone and short yardage. But, Geo, people need to remember they just put on pads for the first time this past week. They've got their first scrimmage tomorrow. What would you like to hear coming out of that first scrimmage?
Kind of just who's separating themselves, because there's been a lot of buzz about different guys. But the moment that you get into those scrimmages and those game scenario settings that they try to reenact during those scrimmages, when the bullets start flying, per se, is when guys start separating themselves from others. Like we always hear the term, is he a gamer? There may be guys that they're not necessarily the best practice guys, but the moment you get into a game setting, they really start to shine. We've seen a few guys like that in the past. I know he just transferred out of the program, but Colby Young was a guy who was the definition of that. When we saw him come into the program about 2 years ago, many people had questions about, is this guy even going to play? Because he just seemed so raw. But the moment he got into a game, you can't teach the things that he had, his size and how well he could catch the ball and high point it and whatnot. But not to get too sidetracked, but yes, who can separate in terms of their competitions, because there is some competitions ongoing. You have your you have your left guard spot having a competition right there going on between Okunlola, Matt McCoy, and then you throw in kind of the tight end situation too, because you have quite a few guys making plays in practice, and even Jackson Carver is starting to catch up to the pace too. So that tight ends room is pretty deep. The other competitions that you would have to focus on in terms of the scrimmages, because this is really who's going to decide who's going to start, who's getting what reps and snaps during games. Defensive line doesn't matter much. Coach Guidry's been very open and honest and frank that it's going to be a lot of rotation there. I'd say maybe the cornerback competition going on. Just kind of, you have this situation where Damari Brown, Daryl Porter, and Jadis Richard are all rotating around between playing corner, nickel, who kind of to determine who's your best nickel mainly. Then you kind of just work your way outside from
I think it might end up being Brown. What do you think?
Yeah.
I think we might see Porter and Richard at the corners and Brown at nickel.
Yeah, I would agree. So I think Damari Brown is the best equipped. You're talking about a guy that runs a legitimate 4.4 in the 40-yard dash, about 6'1", 6'2", 200, some change. Can run with the best of them. Physical, can tackle. Good qualities to have at the nickel spot. Any other competitions out there those are really the main ones. I would say maybe even kind of what's going on at running back behind Damian Martinez, because you may not have Mark Fletcher game 1 or 2 or whatever the scenario may be. They're still monitoring him throughout camp and kind of seeing how he reacts to, just contact and whatnot. AJ Allen and Chris Johnson, that competition is going to be really interesting.
Well, we're learning a lot already here from Geo Milian. We're going to keep the party going here. Happy hour on a Friday. I want to get Geo's take, and I'll give mine. Who needs the victory more August 31st? Because that game means a lot for both Miami and for Florida. We're only getting started, my friends. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new Friday episode of Locked On Canes. And I already know you're keeping it locked to FanDuel. Been making money all summer, having a great time. And I know that in summer, the sports stop sporting like you want them to. But at FanDuel, they let me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And I start to dream up those college football bets because we're almost there. This summer, FanDuel has been hooking up customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com, start making the most out of your summer. And you can lock in Miami over under 9.5 wins this year. Miami plus 450 to win the ACC. You can place your bets. Miami minus 2.5. They are slight favorites at the Swamp in Gainesville for August 31st. So all of that is available right there at FanDuel, official sports betting partner, by the way, of Major League Baseball. Thank you so much for making this Friday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your second listen, check out Locked On ACC. I have the privilege of co-hosting that show with Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. We take you around the conference, whether it be football, basketball previews, lawsuits, conference realignment rumors. There's always something going on in the ACC. So make sure you make Locked On ACC your second listen. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first. We're joined by Miami sports analyst Geo Milian. So, Geo, this question has already been posed by my counterpart, Brandon Olson at Locked On Gators. Who needs the victory more, Miami or Florida? Mario Cristobal or Billy Napier? Who needs that more come August 31st?
I think that is a great question because you can make good arguments for both sides. Florida, the Gators, they have a gauntlet of a schedule this year. Really brutal. Maybe not even so much fair to Billy Napier and kind of what he's trying to build over there, just facing that type of schedule. We'll see how that shakes out. I think looking at it from both sides, probably Billy Napier needs it more. But I will give my argument on why Mario Cristobal needs to win on August 31st, and I'll explain. Very simply, short and sweet to the point. Recruiting, number one. If you win that game, you gain some momentum on the trail. But not only momentum on the trail, but you gain momentum with your team. I think that it is one of those pivotal games this season that if Miami comes out with a win, they start gaining some momentum and some confidence with this year's team that they can get things rolling as the weeks come along, especially when you have Virginia Tech coming to town really soon too. I think they're very much a sleeper team this year. Other thing I'll mention there as well in relation to recruiting and why Mario needs to win that and just win big in general this year. You can only sell a vision for so long. You have to show product results, kind of a path to where are we headed next? What is the trajectory? So if Miami wins that Florida game and you win it convincingly and you pull off a good season, the perception starts to change. A lot of these high school kids, they're kind of on the fence. Some guys are on the fence where they're like, yeah, I really like Miami. I like Mario Cristobal. I like what they're doing, but are they still going to be the same old Miami that we hear these expectations every year or every other year, and they kind of fall short of them? You understand what I'm saying, Donno?
100%. 100%.
So,
and yeah.
I think that that's how Mario Cristobal can combat that, because if Miami does go out there and and have a middling season, I think Mario is going to be working behind the ball because you're going to have to kind of convince guys like, hey, no, we're still on the right track, but X, Y, Z. And sometimes some guys don't want to hear that. They just want to see, okay, where have you gone from year 1 to 2 to 3, and where are we going forward? And not only that, the other last one I'll add, transfer portal wise, if you win that Florida game, you have a big season and whatnot, you become an attractive destination for future transfer portal quarterbacks to come to Miami in a favorable situation with that offensive line, all those weapons on offense, a defensive line that can get after the quarterback. I think Miami really has to play from ahead this year too. You got to be aggressive on offense. You got to let that defensive line really tee off on the quarterback. I think that'll bring a lot of success. Kind of cover up any holes that may potentially be there in the secondary. I think some people will be fairly surprised how good Miami's defensive backfield is this year. There is talent back there. I think some people are overreacting. But yeah, overall, I say Billy Napier, it's more pivotal for him to win that first game.
Yeah.
But there's a lot at stake for Mario too. I think you have arguments on both sides, but looking at it from both ways, I'd say Billy Napier, just between that schedule and 2 losing seasons back to back, a lot of hot seat questions will spark up even more if they lose that game and then ramble off a couple more losses and the season just starts spiraling. And same could happen for Miami. I'm not saying Miami would get rid of Mario. That's not happening at all this year. Miami's invested. They're all in. But it can make things difficult for Mario Cristobal if they don't win that first game and gain some momentum.
Yeah, and from a Miami point of view, the expectations are higher. I mean, Florida, their over-under is 4.5 wins this year, which is very much an illustration of that tough schedule that you talked. Like, it's an absolute gauntlet. They've got the hardest schedule in the country. But then, Miami is actually looked at as a team that can contend for a college football playoff based on their talent and their schedule. And so with that extra expectation, I think creates extra pressure. Like, I'm not arguing with what you said about the Florida point of view, because, yeah, if Billy Napier's seat gets hotter, things are going to get really ugly there, and they're going to have a hard time keeping their recruits, if his job becomes in jeopardy. But, I know, like, some people, the way that they approach the question that I asked you is, well, it's definitely, Florida needs the win way more because it's a home game and the whole Billy Napier thing. But then I look at it the opposite way. I mean, I know it's not a conference game, so it wouldn't affect whether or not they win the ACC, but Miami's got higher expectations. I think that creates more pressure. If the Hurricanes go into Gainesville and lay an egg, all of a sudden, all those off-season champ narratives that people love to throw out there with Miami, those are going to come back up. So this is a really important game for the Hurricanes.
I think it might be the most important game in Mario Cristobal's coaching career, actually. I think very much so, because you have some recruiting battles going on there that Miami narrowly lost. Some legacy guys and whatnot that are Florida Gators that Miami came really close to getting.
Yeah.
You win that game, you kind of, like I said before, you kind of start changing perceptions. But yes, I do think it's the most pivotal year and most pivotal game of Mario Cristobal's coaching career, for sure. There's so much to gain just by winning that game, especially in that environment, to open the season with a team you have, building momentum like that so early on. Regardless of what Florida's record is this year, we all know this in terms of rivalries in college football. You look at Miami, Florida State, let's see what else. Miami, Virginia Tech as well, Miami, Notre Dame, or any rivalries like that in the country, Ohio State, Michigan. No matter what year it is, you could be a 7-5 team and the other one is 11-1, and those guys are going to go out there and play their hearts out on the field, and it might even be a really tight, close game.
Yes,
despite records or final season records, we've seen it before with Miami, Florida State. The the Miami Duke Johnson teams, even though the records weren't so great at the end of the year, they fought hard with those Florida State teams that had Dalvin Cook and Jameis Winston and all those guys. This is just historically speaking, but it's pretty much the norm for rivalry games. So do I think Miami has a chance to win big and surprise some people in first game of the season? Yeah. But we'll see.
Well, he mentioned how much this game could mean for recruiting. There are going to be some top Miami targets who are going to be announcing even before that game takes place, including a 5-star receiver who's going to be announcing literally a day before the game, and he's got Miami in his top 4. We'll talk about Jaime Ffrench and some of Miami's other top recruiting targets when we come back. We got Geo Milian with us. You guys want to keep it locked right here? We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, there's a reason why Game Time is the only ticket app that I use. In fact, there's multiple reasons. I love how at Game Time, I'm a procrastinator by nature. I tend to wait till the last minute. Game Time actually rewards you for that because the prices go down the closer you get to game time or showtime, because you can also get concert, comedy tickets, musical theater tickets. Game Time, by the way, is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Speaking of Major League Baseball, they're practically paying you to buy Marlins tickets these days. Is how cheap the Marlins tickets are on Game Time. You're going to find the absolute best deals there. I love how at Game Time you could save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. They give you the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you so much for making this Friday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Also, make sure you're checking out Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin does an awesome job taking you around all the major and even not so major college football teams. You know he's going crazy with the season about to start again. So make sure you check out Locked On College Football, part of this awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Geo Milian, South Florida sports analyst, joins us. All right, so Geo, Jaime Ffrench, 5-star wide receiver. He just announced his top 4 today, even though he had a top 3, but now it's somehow getting bigger before he announces on August 30th. So there was a reported top 3 for Ffrench a couple of weeks ago, which had Miami, Texas, and LSU. He's also added now the Tennessee Volunteers to that list. And Jaime Ffrench out of Mandarin High School in Jacksonville, he's going to be announcing the day before Miami at Florida on August 30th. What a nice pregame treat it would be if Miami could land a verbal commitment from Jaime Ffrench. But how's that one trending in your eyes?
So before I jump into that, totally skip my mind because I'm doing this as organic as possible for people. No notes in front of me today at all, just right off the top of my head. Before I forget, speaking about 5 stars, Justin Scott, since the pads have come on, from who I spoke to that was at practice on Saturday and again Monday and Tuesday, he is living up to that billing. I think Miami fans can get really excited about him. He's going to be involved this year. That was one of the questions Coach Guidry had during media day. If, how will it look when the pads come on? He's starting to check off those boxes. Jaime Ffrench, though, staying on track here. His recruitment, wow, kind of been all over the place. So he was committed to Alabama when Nick Saban was there, decommitted. Miami was his first collegiate offer. I'm not sure if many people are aware of that. The other thing I'll mention as well, Texas has been a mainstay for a while, LSU as well. Miami's always been in it. I mentioned, I would say it was about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and then all the reports started coming out about a week or 2 weeks later that Miami was still very much in that conversation with Jaime Ffrench. Many people were just automatically assuming that, oh, he's going to Texas and it's over and blah, 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 blah. In recruiting, nothing's ever really over until it's truly over. Even no matter what he decides on the 30th, anything during the season can change a kid's mind by the time December rolls around. So the old saying, wake me up in December. But Tennessee, the other program you asked about, yeah, they've been lingering in there. He took some visits as well, but it's really down between Miami and LSU. I've been on record saying this for well over a month now. I really like where Miami's at in that recruitment. I do think they have a legitimate shot of landing Jaime Ffrench on August 30th, which I don't think many people probably saw about 3 or 4 months ago. Not even I did. It was kind of caught me by surprise when I was speaking to someone involved in the 7-on-7 football scene down here in the state of Florida that, he kind of tipped me off that he was really seriously considering Miami and that they were a real option on the table. So yeah, between Miami and LSU, Miami has a great shot. He has some family in Louisiana and whatnot. But Miami really knocked it out of the park during his last visit.
Speaking of 5 stars, do you have much of a gauge on what's going on with Iose Epenesa? I obviously we hear Miami come up with him a lot. I know Gary Furman at Kane Sport did drop the on-3 version of a crystal ball for him a while back. I hear a lot about Miami, Utah, and obviously Iowa for him. Multiple family members of his went to Iowa, but I don't know. Everyone I talk to, even guys who interact with Iose personally, they don't really get. He doesn't talk a whole lot about where he's leaning. Like he keeps things pretty tight, I think.
Yeah, he's kept his recruitment very close to the vest. There's been some confidence on Miami's side that he's someone that they could land when he decides to put everything on the table and make his decision. I know Iowa's involved there, as you mentioned, him being a legacy. His brother AJ, who had went there, Buffalo Bills defensive end. You also have Missouri's also involved too, and then Utah as well. Utah has actually done a really good job in terms of recruiting him. Not many people saw that coming, but they have done a pretty good job with him. Coming off his official visit, though, I did hear a lot of positive things in regards to like pro Miami, but it's really a hard read. And Donno, you're right on the money with it. It's a hard read. Like even speaking to guys around the Miami football program, they're just like, yeah, like we feel good, but it's kind of like, he's one of those type of guys that happens in some recruitments.
Our guest today, Geo's now a media mogul. Tell us about your new business venture. And I know like the full launch is coming up, so maybe you can't take us too inside what you're working on, but whatever you can tell us, Geo, we would appreciate it because people love your stuff, man, whether, you're doing your own shows or on this show, all the spaces that you host. Let people know what's next for you.
Yeah. So for anyone not aware, about a little over a month ago, I ended up, actually a little more than that. I kept it quiet for a little while, but I ended up leaving Life Wallet. Wish them all the best and everything. For about 2 years now, I've had this feeling personally that it was time for me to do my own thing. I've had experience in different places and just different formats and whatnot. I thought it was really cool working in the NIL space for almost 2 years. That was a phenomenal experience working with, I would say, 85% of Miami's current roster. I worked with all those guys for the past 2 years. So really nice experience getting to know those kids on a very personal level. What is next for me, though, the company's called Geos Inc. And that is short for Global Entertainment Online Sports Incorporated. Yes, bread and butter is always going to be Miami Hurricanes. I've always been involved with the Canes for years now. Going to be delving into some other things that I've already been doing for the past year and a half, 2 years. NBA, NFL, and whatnot. Don't
And
worry,
those video games,
yes, video games as well. Donno actually knows I'm quite tech savvy. They say in some of these group chats that people are kind of shocked with some of some of the things that I bring up or even mention or say.
Yeah.
By the way, for anyone watching who plays EA College Football 25, you should expect that big roster update to drop on August 29th.
Oh, good.
All freshmen, so the guys that are missing from the game and whatnot.
We need Sam Brown in there. I feel so bad for that. He wants to be in the game so bad, Sam Brown. They got to put him in the game.
Oh, yeah. By the way, on social media, you can also follow me on X at Geo Milian. I'm sure many of you have seen me on there. I also have the business account at Geos_INC Inc. Or you can also follow me on Instagram at geo.milian. And I've also partnered with one of the bigger Miami Hurricanes Instagram pages. I'm building up my influence out in that scape as well. You can check out at Cane Smoke on Instagram as well.
Well, all continued success here to Geo Milian. I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Hit that thumbs up button if you're watching on YouTube. Smash that like button. If you want to find the audio version, please do. Maybe you're already at the audio version. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey app, wherever you get your pods. We'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.